Serious, has anyone witnessed someone who was possessed or went through an exorcism? What's your story? When I was 14, me and my best friend at the time got a Ouija table and decided to play with it a bit. We got into a dark room at my place, did light some candles and started the bull crap. Another friend of ours knocked the door as we tried to contact the spirits. We let her in and resumed. This third person kept mocking as we tried to get the supernatural messages, when, all of a sudden, she passed out. We thought she was joking, but then she opened her eyes and started to talk with a voice that wasn't hers. It was damn scary, but we still thought she could be playing with us. Then she laughed, a horrible laughter, and started to say things that happened to me that I never had said to anyone. And same for my best friend. Candles started flickering and the flames went a bit too high for my skeptical being not to shiver in spite of myself. My best friend ran out of my place straight to her neighbor, who was a condom blaze mother of saint. When the woman came to my place and saw our friend, she gasped and told us to help bringing the girl to her place. We did so, but not before getting some scratches by not allowing her to get undressed in daylight, calling to some men that were looking at us as we marched towards the Holy Mother's place. Once there, she locked herself with the girl in her room and told us to wait outside. I don't know what happened, but after a couple hours our friend came out. Very tired and didn't remember anything after we let her in and started to play with the Ouija table. The Mother of Saint told us off to not to play with what we can't control and whatnot. Nowadays I believe this friend got impressed, suggested with the ritual and it was all. The only intriguing thing is the fact that she knew all those secret things about me and my best friend. It was scary for two 14-year-old girls, that's for sure. I do paranormal investigations with a friend and a family member and we're going to be doing like a ghost hunting show on YouTube that should come out in May of 2015 and personally, no, I've never seen someone possessed but I know someone who has. My cousin's friend, we'll call Bob, was with a friend one night and Bob's friend was freaking out saying they had a demon living in their house. Bob noticed their friend's eyes were black, not the white parts of their eyes but like, the color part of their eyes were black. They had a really light green color of eyes and Bob started freaking out and telling him this and his friend started talking in a different voice, a different language with a good accent too. It was an English accent I believe and they were in English. Then the voice got all crackly and crap so Bob sprinted home and hid there for the rest of the night. Days later, Bob found out his friend had consulted with a priest and they needed an exorcism. Although I don't know if this is entirely true, as I wasn't there, Bob was really freaking out and scared when telling me the story. Yes. One of our live-in housekeepers, maids experienced a demonic possession. I was one of the first to discover her. She was shouting obscenities, religious ones, while contorting her body as if she had a seizure. Nothing odd or unnaturally flexible, just thrusting her torso and legs up and down on the bed. She was on the verge of really hurting herself. My first thought was holy crap. She's having a seizure. I tried to get her into a car and to drive her to a hospital but she would not stop spazzing out so we were scared she would hurt herself on the car ride going there. I'd find out later that real seizures really do not last this long. Eventually, we got some neighbors and nearby security guards to pin her down on a mattress for what seemed like an eternity, 1 to 2 hours. She would not stop screaming, until our parents came home. I was crying just from how stressful it was, not knowing what exactly was going on, and if our housekeeper would be alright. When my parents heard about what was going on, despite being devout Catholics, they were extremely rational and level-headed about it and even said we are not calling a priest. Eventually, paramedics arrived. The odd, and wasteful, thing about it was that the housekeeper displayed no other signs that constituted that of a medical emergency. Aside from the screaming and spazzing out and possibly hurting herself, she did not vomit, bleed, foam at the mouth. It was only when the paramedics gave her a sedative did she calm down. And this happened a few more times, and we were all a lot more nonchalant about it knowing that it wasn't a medical emergency. But we still had to enlist the help of others to pin her down until she'd finally calm down, approx 1 to 2 hours. It also shook me a lot psychologically, as I was sorta young. After she was laid off, I found out much later on that whenever she was possessed, her relatives would simply hog-tie her and tie her to the bed, and she would finally calm down. Apparently, as my sister who majors in psych suggested, our housekeeper's tendency to be possessed is a way for her to feed off the attention of others while processing internal stress or turmoil that makes it difficult to cope. Throwaway. Because throwaway. I've never told that story to anyone because 1, just talking about it freaks me out good and 2, I know 99% of people won't believe me. But, here's to Reddit. Warning, pretty long post here about exorcism and stuff. Don't read if you don't want to believe, and if you want to sleep tonight. I am a 6'2", rather fit man. I practice Aikido and can bench press 240. My father and his brothers are pretty much as tall as I am, maybe less strong due to age, although most of them have been in fighting sports for a while. One of my aunts is about 5 feet 4 inches, probably weighs like 110 liters. B.S. At best. There was this time when she really went plain crazy. She would get incredibly angry / out of control at random times, spitting nonsense words, and there would be absolutely no way I, or my father, or both of us would be able to get her down. This felt like DBZ Yamcha trying to get perfect cell into an UFC submission. She had 10 times my strength. We needed to be 4 to actually pin her down and get her to stop moving until she calms down. That was extremely scary. She could just pop off anytime and go crazy. Now I didn't believe in the supernatural, but my grandmother, a rather traditional Moroccan woman, was convinced she was possessed. And honestly, it really felt like it. For those who don't know it, Morocco has a pretty big culture about supernatural / sorcery / possess / exorcism crap. So most of the elders in the family firmly believe in it. Fast forward a few months later, when it was getting way too difficult for us to handle her. My uncle contacted a good friend in Morocco who has an exorcist in his family. The exorcist asked us to do one rather twisted thing. He asked my aunt if she could put a drip of her blood in a glass of water, and leave the glass somewhere in the apartment while she's sleeping, not next to her. We were reluctant, but my grandmother forced her to do it. On the morning, the glass was empty. I'm still convinced she probably just woke up at night and drank it, but the exorcist's version was she is possessed by a demon, commonly known in the Muslim culture as Jinn or Jinn. Giving him this blood just was a way for you to welcome him and calm him down temporarily, and she needs to see an exorcist ASAP. Now we were getting convinced he was right, seeing her often getting crazier and crazier. In desperate times. Sometimes you just chose to believe to a possible solution. So at this point I decided to believe in what he said, and we had to go get a proof that he was right. We live in France. We decided to drive to Morocco, about 1,500 kilometers driving plus a 6-hour boat, plus 500 kilometers in Morocco again. During the drive I've never been as scared as this day. I was sitting down behind, on the right, my father on the left, my aunt between us. She went crazy at some point. We couldn't really hold her as she was trying to hit my uncle driving. We almost ran into a wall. My father had to, dangerously, choke her until she lost some strength. Anyway. Here we are in Morocco. Getting to this village named Sefrou, known as one of the biggest places in the country where sorcery happens. Rather creepy place. And not in a conventional creepy way. What we know of creepy are just what horror movies picture. The African creepy is on another level. We get to meet this exorcist guy. He asks us to buy a sheep to sacrifice, and tells us we should bring him the sheep's guts back to him for the exorcism to happen. My father and uncle take care of this. Me. I am ducking scared. As stated earlier, I didn't believe in that crap. I decided to because honestly the situation called it. But at this point, in a freaking spooky village in the middle of Morocco, where we are advised to never eat anything outside or accept anything from strangers who might try to curse us, where everything looks twisted AF, I was really losing it and couldn't wait to leave this place forever. On the following day we went to the exorcist's, bringing him these guts. He puts them in a bowl, asks that if we are feeling strong enough we should stay with him as more people would make it easier to exorcise my aunt. Well, I really wanted to leave, but seeing everybody staying, I stayed as well. My aunt is lying down in front of us, next to the bowl. We are sitting down around her holding hands, and the exorcist starts saying stuff I can understand. It was traditional Arabic and not a Moroccan dialect. He gets sweaty as he talks faster. I see my aunt twitching in what looked like pain. The light went out. Holy crap, I think I peed my pants at this moment. The exorcist screams something. My aunt screams as well, then total silence. I think the silence was for about 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. The exorcist's assistant then comes in with a lamp, and we see that both my aunt and him passed out. The bowl is on the floor and the guts next to it. The guts turned black. I am having goosebumps just writing that and repicturing that. The assistant urges us not to touch the guts at any cost. Exorcist wakes up, goes put some water on his face, then tells us to follow him. We went to a nearby, empty hill, on top of it, and he asked us to burn the guts right there, as the demon was now possessing the sheep and we could now get rid of it. Done. I have never seen my aunt showing any problem whatsoever since this day. Her crisis periods never happened again. She never went back to this angry mode, and to this day that honestly still scare the crap out of me. Just seeing her now gives me the chills. And the worst is, her sons love me but I really have trouble staying around her as I am genuinely scared, and they obviously don't know why. Sorry for the extra long post guys. That's actually the first time I share this story and I'm shaking on my keyboard right now. After this event I grew really interested in the whole Moroccan demon mythology and learned a lot about it. Now, I don't believe they exist. I know they exist, and they don't make much difference anyway aside from this kind of event. If you actually want to know more feel free to ask me details. I actually talked more in detail with this same exorcist guy and holy crap. The world is big and deep and we don't understand 1/10 of it. TLDR, my aunt was possessed and I saw a real-life exorcism happening right in front of me. Now she's fine. Not as a joke, I seriously expect the seizure rate of people to go down due to them being about to receive medical cannabis in so many states, since I figure less exorcisms will go on, but that's not going to fix the problem overnight. Haters gonna hate, and if they think you are possessed because you are in some medical emergency, you stay possessed until the pastor changes his mind. Legally it should be a form of kidnap and torture in this day and a time frame if they were held against their will. I understand they could be a danger to others, but call for real help, not a priest. The summary of the Bible is supposed to be you need to make positive choices because there's negative consequences for bad actions and nobody is going to do the work for you, not even God, so better get to work. That's pretty much the summary. I saved you 300 pages. Someone receiving an exorcism against their will would be like if someone saw someone go into diabetic shock and fall on the ground. Not that I'd ever see it happen in my lifetime. I wouldn't possibly instantly recognize what was going on to help the suffering person, but I certainly wouldn't hog-tie him, yell at him, and spray him with water to make him feel better. I think the average American needs like free medical training to some degree. In the essence of harm reduction, we would save so many lives that deserve a second chance even though they may have made a few bad decisions. You gotta have compassion, and with an exorcism I don't think there's any there. It looks more like dominance and submission. Dominance, submission. Blue Oyster Cult medical cannabis is doing miracles for seizures basically, and pure CPD gets you no high. It's straight up medicine. Just treat others as if they are you in a different life, but don't be a dumbass about it. If that was Lie's simple philosophy, the world would be a little nicer possibly. I have never known what to make of this. The high school I went to was a religious private school. Senior year, it was traditional for the entire senior class to go on a religious retreat up in this remote resort in the mountains with a few teachers. The point of the retreat was to grow closer to each other as a class and also to find God? Experience spirituality? They took away our phones and forbade us from using any form of the internet or communication with the outside world. Then they made us go through a series of soul-bearing exercises and speeches and whatnot. Honestly, pretty cheesy stuff, not that exciting. On the third day of the retreat, however, the entire grade is in the main hall doing an hour of silent prayer that was pretty much like meditation, but we were supposed to be communicating with God. All of a sudden there's a huge crash and everyone looks over to see a girl toppled over onto the floor. As everyone stares, she starts writhing around on the ground and screaming, but not screaming in, like, pain. The voice that she was screaming was in a really strange, deep voice and didn't sound like her at all. Someone yelled, "She's seizing." I remember that because there was a girl in our class who was known to have epileptic seizures and would do it in assembly pretty frequently, but it wasn't the same girl. Then she stood up and started yelling in tongues. Her eyes were rolled up and her head kept twitching back and forth. She started to run all around the room, yelling in an unintelligible gibberish language, and every now and then she would run at the cross in the middle of the room and then run back, screaming and crying. At first I honestly thought this was a dumb high school prank to freak everyone out, but if that was what it was, she took it way too far. The teachers tried to calm her down but she just kept screaming in this weird language. She started pulling on her hair, so one of the teachers called an ambulance, but we all knew it would take a while for them to get to this remote retreat. Another teacher tried to take her by the shoulders and she dug her nails into his arm really hard and just kept screaming. It took several more minutes to calm her down. The teachers actually evacuated us from the room, and then she just went quiet. They took that girl away that night, though I don't know how. We were all kept in the cafeteria after that, and she never came back to school after the retreat was over. I wasn't friends with her friends, so I don't know if they knew what really happened. Probably expelled for her prank. But maybe not. It went on way too long and convincingly for me to really tell myself that she duck around in front of all the teachers like that. It was insane. I don't know. None of the teachers were ever allowed to talk about it when we asked, afterward. But that's the story. My family used to own and run a real estate office. My grandfather owned it and was the boss. My mother managed the rent roll and clients and I worked there on weekends as a teenager. We worked in a multicultural area, which I always loved, and there was a reasonable Maori/Islander community there, a lot of whom were very religious. In one particular property we managed, there was this one family who had two sons. One of them played football with my brother and the other is the subject of this incident. So this kid was 11, I think, and, according to the family, began acting strangely. He'd have violent outbursts, say terrible things, stuff like that. Apparently he was really seriously out of control. The family called their Baptist, I think, minister and asked what they should do. Was there even anything they could do? The minister told them that he was free one evening later that week and he'd bring the things needed for a baptism. He said that he'd perform an exorcism for them and a good spiritual leader, good religious people and a baptism could oust an evil spirit. This particular evening arrived and the minister got all set up. He got this deep tub which they all filled with water for the baptism. He chose some passages from the Bible that'd help with the exorcism and got the whole family to gather around for support and prayer. Now, Islander families tend to be large. There were aunts and uncles, cousins and grandparents. Everyone was there and willing to help this child. The parents are instructed to bring out the kid so the father goes in to get him. The kid was a ducking mess. He was described as being like the Tasmanian devil from the cartoons, just all over the place. His dad put the boy over his shoulder and brought him down to where everyone was standing, the kid fighting at every step, but with his father being an absolutely enormous man, he didn't stand a chance. The minister said for everyone to gather around and put their hands on the child and to pray for him. The father held him in the middle of the family group and everyone reached out their hands to touch the boy who was thrashing around like a wild thing. What I heard was that it seemed like the boy was totally out of control. Time comes for the minister to say whatever it was he said and then for them to get him into the tub for the baptism which was supposed to expel the demon they figured was possessing him. The father and an uncle or something were the ones who got him into the tub and the family stood around praying their hearts out. But the boy tried to escape the second his body hit the water. He put up a crazy fight and more family members came to get him into the water. Finally they got him in and they were able to hold him there. And hold him. And hold him. And hold him. They didn't mean to do it, but they drowned him. He was an 11-year-old boy who was on the cusp of puberty. Of course his behavior was erratic, of course his attitude was ducking awful, of course he fought being held down by his own family. What did they think was going to happen? The parents, uncle and minister were all arrested. The uncle got off on an accessory charge, the parents got 10 years but got out sooner and the minister got 15 and was in just about the whole time because he was the leader. He should have known better. My mom had to go and talk to the police, be a character witness, talk about the family and the property and whatnot. That certainly wasn't the only awful thing that happened while I worked there but it was the most traumatic. Not exactly possessed, but similar I guess. TLDR friend's mom is cursed, so Brujo summons a wolf spirit to get rid of it. So my friend is Mexican, just like me, so our families believe a lot of crazy crap. Well, my friend's mom believed that someone had put a curse on her, seeing as how so many weird and unfortunate things had been happening to her lately. Also, her rapidly decreasing health. Since back in her village you'd hire a curandero or brujo for this stuff, she searched around and finally found a reputable one. Well, he paid her a house visit and turns out that she had been cursed. According to him, a jealous ex-lover of her husband had put a pretty wicked one on her. He even said that she was lucky to still be walking. Anyway, he said he was going to perform a ritual that night on her in order to dispel the evil, but she had to completely relax and close her eyes, because he was going to summon a great spirit who was not supposed to be seen by humans or something like that. Anyway, the brujo goes and does all his business while her daughter, my friend, is there for support. Well, the brujo starts chanting and the room she tells, became very heavy and loud, gradually then building up. She couldn't see anything because her eyes were obviously closed, but she felt a presence in the room. Then she heard growling and howling and all sort of animalistic noises. Anyway, the brujo said he had found a willing wolf spirit to trace and get rid of the curse. My friend told me she pretty much shat herself hoping for it to be over. After a few hours the noises finally stopped and the room felt light again. Then said that the spirit had done its job and that her mom was good to go. Which she did, which blew my mind since the next day she was healthy as an ox. Still gives me chills thinking about it.